My name is Adam Hernandez, and for this video, I will present a new story of life's preference for symmetry is like a new law of nature, with my primary article being titled, Symmetry and Simplicity Spontaneously Emerge from the Algorithmic Nature of Evolution. The news article titled Life's Preference for Symmetry is Like a New Law of Nature was an article published in the New York Times by Kate Golembiewski on March 24th of 2022. Begins off by stating the common occurrence that is symmetry, how it is often found in nature in many different species. It is then stated that biologists are not certain as to why symmetry is something that is so common, but that the field of computer science may explain why. They then went on to cite the literature article that will then be reviewed, and they stated that, and I quote, researchers analyzed thousands of protein complexes and RNA structures as well as model network of molecules that control how genes switch on and off. They found that evolution tends towards symmetry because the instructions to produce symmetry are easier to embed in genetic code and follow. Afterwards, various quotes from the publisher of this article were used in the news story, usually stating their excitement or confidence regarding this article. It was also stated that the reason why this is becoming more and more common is because it is easier to reproduce repeating patterns rather than complex or random ones. This goes hand in hand with what we have learned about evolution in Bio 182. In the literature article, it's important to discuss the hypothesis and their methods to get a better understanding of the results. Their hypothesis was that symmetric structures preferentially arise not just due to natural selection, but also because they require less specific information to encode and are therefore much more likely to appear as phenotypic variation through random mutations. The way they did this was by testing various biological data to attempt to show that there is bias towards a simple and more symmetric phenotype. The results produced by the experiments are in favor of the researchers' hypothesis. The results go to suggest that the biological systems tested may favor high simplicity and, when needed, high symmetry. One example of the test is the model gene regulatory network, where they tested a model of the budding yeast cell cycle. Here, they had a random sample of 156 concentrations of the budding yeast cell, and then they divided them through different methods by their complexity. After dividing each group by their complexity, they went to test the frequency of the CLB2/SIC1 complex, which was a key part of the cycle for each group. Using the results of the experiment, this graph, which is now presented, was created. The x-axis consists of complexity, with the higher number indicating that the concentration was more. Therefore, the results go to suggest that a concentration that was less complex had a higher frequency of completing this important part of the cell cycle, indicating that it would be better for it to be less complex and possibly more symmetrical. So, after reviewing these two, I asked myself, did the news story properly represent the literature article? Yes, kind of. Both texts were in agreement with each other, and both reached the same conclusion, but the literature article was only presented as evidence few times throughout the news story. Actually, quotes of the researchers and the writers and the publishers of the literature article praising their own work was more common throughout the news story than the actual article. To show this, I went throughout the news story and counted how many times the literature article was actually presented as evidence to support their argument, and it came out to the number of 3 times. Afterwards, I counted the number of times there were quotes of researchers or others praising or commenting about the work, and it came out as triple the amount, 9 times. Now, it should be stated that there was no evidence of malintent throughout this news story. While the literature article was presented few times, It was never misrepresented, and none of the results from the literature article were taken out of context in support of a wrong argument. That being said, it seemed almost like the news story was created to hype up the argument rather than present it and show why it's right. In conclusion, I'm confident saying that the news story did not misrepresent the news article, but could have done a better job in representing it. This video was made within the context of Bio 182 General Biology for Major 2, Arizona State University, 2022.